Here's part 2, which is actually part 6 of the thing about Deuteronomy 5. Go ahead, Greg. You had something you want to say?
Yeah, I was just kind of contemplating some of the some of the ideas and concepts, and this is kind of a question that I've had, and maybe you can address it through this teaching or whatever. But it talks about not doing these things the ways that the nations do, and it's like, should we understand that to not do these things at all, or is it not to do these things the way the nations do to other gods? And I ask that question just because you think about Anon, the cloud, soothsayer, or divination, and like eriktology is kind of a form of divination if you think about it. But it's rightly divining, right? And so you're separating it out, you're divining the Hebrew letters, and you're doing this. And I think about Israel was led out of Egypt with a cloud by day and a fire by night. So the literal interpretation of cloud, but what if that's observer of times? He was led out by divination, led out by Moses. And thinking about the Messiah, who was he ascended into a cloud, right? And so the veil, the cover, our flesh is like a veil as well, and it's it's to be covered, it's to be secret. It's kind of like are we supposed to seek these things out, but not in the way the nations do? Like, for example, Egypt, they have invoking their gods whenever you go into their temples, and it's kind of like a seance or whatever. But you see that throughout Scripture. It's call upon the name of Yahweh. It's to invoke that spirit. It's to it's incantation or enchantments. And so it's like you see these things like casting lots or Urim and Thummim, like the stones lighting up. These practices are these. I see those as those things that the nations do, but I don't see believers doing that, except I see the prophets and people doing that. So that's kind of, I wonder if there's like a distinction between doing those things for and the purpose of Yahuwah with him versus to the nations, to the other gods. And I think of like faith begins with that confession, with that mouth, with that speaking the words and building your own tower versus the Tower of Babel. Like it was a pyramid scheme, right? We've been tricked and hoodwinked, but the Tower of El Elyon, the highest of all highs. So I just kind of wonder if there's like a distinction between doing certain things versus not doing them at all versus, doing them to before Yahuwah, speaking his words, incanting and, speaking forth those things like the Messiah says, speak unto this tree, or, all of faith begins with that confession. That's the mindset, is like having that mind to, in order for you to actually believe it, you start to speak it and you confess it, and then it becomes your reality. Once it becomes so ingrained, it becomes a part of you. No, just some thoughts.
Well, I would agree that the whole idea that the Urim and the Thummim are these 2 stones that were placed in a pocket behind the 12 stones that would cause them to light up and sparkle or twinkle, and you could read it. Almost sounds like a Ouija board thing. It's always been kind of disturbing. I have a different take on that, in that I don't think the Urim and Thummim were 2 stones placed in a pocket behind the stones, but that Urim and Thummim are 2 adjectives describing the quality attributes of all 12 stones, because Urim means lights or translucent, you might say, and Thummim means perfect, which is to say a perfect quality, not cracks and other things, but perfect specimen. Could be referring to being in the plural, Thummim and or im. The im is the suffix that refers to multiple, like all 12. So anyway, the point is that why would he say don't mess around with stuff like Ouija boards and casting, looking at clouds, and then have sparkling lights on the breastplate, the chosen of the high priest? It's like, doesn't look contradictory. But when he says lo yehi laka Elohim achrim al panei, joined to, in conjunction with my face, other Elohim, other powers, other mighty, other gods, other mechanisms. Well, then my point is, in this conversation, is we have to know what his face is. And if it's contradictory to his face, leave it alone. Well, what's his face? Well, then you have to know him. And so when you say that the Migdal Oz of the Shem Yahuwah, one might say, is that the same as Buddha or Muhammad or I heard there was 3 million deities of the Hindu belief. Is that the same as Jesus Christ? Is the Shem Yahuwah the same as Jesus Christ, or is it different? If it's different, it's an Elohim Achrim. So we have to know the Shem of Yahuwah. That's the point. Because if we are thinking we know, we have a relationship with God, we have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, if that's an Elohim Achrim, we're in big trouble. And you could say the scary verses of the New Testament, the worst verses of the New Testament, Yeshua is going to separate, as it were, wheat from tares, sheep from goats, and he's going to say, I never knew you. We did miracles in your name. We prayed in your name. We sang worship songs in your name. We cast out demons and raised the dead and healed the sick. We did all this stuff with evidence, with signs following, and we, as far as we knew, we had your Holy Spirit, because this is all charismatic Pentecostal kingdom stuff. And you're saying you never knew us? Flabbergasted, astounded, blown away. How do you say you never knew us? We did it in your name. Wouldn't have happened except it was in your name. But Yahusha standing there said, it wasn't me. Well, then that means there's a false entity masquerading in his name, such that, and remember, Yeshua said that many, wide is the gate, and many are those that go to destruction, and narrow is the gate, narrow the way, and very few find the way of life. And it's like, why did he make it so hard? I thought he loved the world, that he didn't want any to perish. And it's like, well, he may have a heart that says, I don't want anybody to perish, but I'm giving people, human beings, Adam, their own choice. Will they find life where they walk in my Yahuwah Zavot's ways or not? I'm going to call them, I'm going to beckon, but see, the Christian model is, hey, nobody can come to the Father except for he gives them faith, he gives them the Spirit, he compels them, he draws them, he makes them, as it were. Is that the same as giving every man, every Adam, his right to choose life or death? Yahweh or not Yahweh? Yahweh or Elohim Achrim? It's not Yahuwah or Jesus. Are the two opposed? Or are they echad? Are they a singularity? Well, if they're a singularity, then if Yahweh is all about his Torah and his chok, his law, his mitzvot, and the Christian Jesus is grace, no law. Law is nailed to the cross. The curse of the law. The law itself is being thought of as a curse, but the curse that the law tells us about is that if you don't walk in his ways, you'll die. That's the curse of what the law says. But people think of, and I say this because I was taught that the law itself is the curse. The curse of the law is death. You're under the law, you're going to die. You think about the law, you're going to die. And it's like, that's not the curse of the law. The law is not a curse. The law tells us that if we're not of the Shem Yahuwah, if we're not in his Migdal, we have no Shegev. We have no strength of being in a lofty position, inaccessibly high from our adversaries. So this going back to Isaiah 27:5, Chazak, grab a hold, Bet Mem Ayin Vav Zion Yod, Ba Mauzi, Musi. This is the verse where I say, if they had only grabbed a hold of my Musi, if they had only, so this is translated Aleph Vav as if only. Well, you look in the dictionary and it's the word or, O-R, like, or what? Well, that's where you got to read what came before it, which we could do. I don't know that we'll have time, but if you can look at Isaiah 25, 26, and the first 4 verses of 27, and then you end up with Aleph Vav, meaning or. Or he will, Yod prefix, he will chazak, he will strongly, but Zayin Kuf is a chain, a fetter. A fetter is like a manacle where you're put into the stocks, you're bonded to something. Compel, bind, force, be strong. But it's doing it proactively. So if every man for himself must grab a hold, bet, mem, ayin, vav, zayin, yod, bamauzi. Well, bet is a prefix, the condition of, or on, with, in, among, through. Mem is a place of, but it's also away from. So as soon as you have a mem prefix, there's 2 ways to read it, being of or away from, which is the not of. So it sets up that the rest of the word could be read in 2 different aspects. And what you have is ayin, vav, zayin. Yod means my. So if Yahweh's speaking and he's saying, this is my mos. So I picture a moose with the antlers that look like a castle wall. Well, what's ayin, vav, zayin? Like that word az, this is auz, ayin, zayin, vav, tav. That's a derivative if you look at that, and it means daring, bold, strong. But it's also impudent, indolent, audacious lack of respect. So if it's the mem of ayin, vav, zayin means refuge or safety, like a tower, citadel, castle, fortress, which is a migdal, oz. See, the word oz is the adjective, the migdal, the gedol, is the noun. But here, mem makes it a noun of ayin, vav, zayin, which is not exactly a adjective, but the concept of refuge or safety is the aspect of what good is it, what use is it. So you could say it's the place where the daring, bold, strong, well, that's then an aspect of Het Zayin Kuf. So the ones who are daring and bold, well, Yahweh's basically saying he wants his people to be daring and bold, like a goat. Ayin Zayin is goat, jumping on those cliffs and landing on, boy, you see some of these pictures on the internet because so many things are filmed nowadays that never used to be, that those goats can leap and land on something like a half an inch wide, their feet. How do they do that? How are they willing to do it? They don't even have a mind of fear. They just jump, and if they fall, looks like they're not even thinking of that. Like looking at some guys that do stuff on bicycles and skateboards. It's like, what? People do things that are filmed now, that are videoed, that astounding to me. But that approach, the same way somebody would do something on a bicycle or a skateboard or gymnastics, there was a guy I saw that, the Red Bull, they have these guys with these suits, Rocky the Flying Squirrel type suits, and they soar out. And this guy had one of those on, but he was laying on a carpet. And so the carpet was actually serving as the same kind of airfoil. And it's like, boy, from underneath, it just looked like this guy riding a flying carpet. People are just willing to jump off cliffs and do. It looks to me like Yahweh wants his people to have that attitude, not trusting in the aerodynamics of a certain, you might say, tactical apparatus that our human engineers have designed. His words, the Shem Yahweh. But see, if mem is also away from, that's where it plays into the ayin, vav, zayin, is quit being impudent, indolent, and an audacious lack of respect. It can be read both ways. The attitude of saying, I'm going to be Kuf Nun Aleph. I don't remember where it is. There's a verse where Yahweh says he is Kana, Kuf Nun Aleph, about his stuff, and he's looking for, or he's desiring, he's wanting his people, somebody to be also Kuf Nun Aleph about his stuff, which is Bemauzi. He's looking for somebody to chazak b'ma'uzi. I want my people to rotz yerotz, to intentionally run favorable to, agree, consent, and then satisfy. I'm going to make a vow to be your people, and I'm going to be your people by fulfilling that vow. That attitude, that proactive, I'm going to be what you have always said you wanted. And then he said, the Migdol Oz is Nashagav Zadik for you. But see, that's not just, well, if you're genetically born of the tribes of Israel, it's yours. No, that's not what it's about. Or if you ask Jesus into your heart, you're the bride of Christ. Not necessarily the same thing. Because he goes on to say, Yod Ayin Shin Hey Yasha, he will do. Remember, what's that verb ayin shin hey? Force, compel, accomplish, acquire, cause, gain, press, squeeze. It's this action of making something happen. Like say these certain 9 words and it synchronizes with abundance manifestation and it'll attract. It'll make something happen if you say a certain thing and decrustify your pineal gland or enliven your hippocampus, then it'll make something happen. If you want to make something happen, it's ayin shin hey. And then here's the word shalom, peace. So you look at the translations and you look online and you'll see 20 translations come up and they all say, peace he will make with me, peace he will make with me. I don't think that's what it says. It says he will grab hold of strongly compelling, binding force of my musi, my place of refuge and safety, with a strong, daring grip, attitude. He will do completely. He will do completely Lamed Yod, what belongs to me. Well, you have to know what's Yahuwah's stuff so that you can intentionally do with a strong grip Yahweh's stuff, which happens to be his language, his name, his day, his moedim, and justice and righteousness. If you're about the business of doing his stuff, so let me look at the way this is phrased. Yod ayin shin hey, shin lamed vav mem, lamed yod. And then it's followed by shin lamed vav mem, yod ayin shin hey, lamed yod. See, they got the words opposite. So if the translations say, if only he would have grabbed a hold of my moose, if he would have only strongly binded himself to my refuge and safety, he will make peace with me, peace he will make with me. It sounds like he's saying the same thing twice, but look at this a little closer. He will make, or he will do, is the yod prefix of ayin shin hey. Ayin shin hey again, to do, to make, to force, to compel, to accomplish, to press, to squeeze, to produce. It's to make something happen. And what's he making happen? Shalom. Or I could say shalom li. Lamed yod is my, like ani ladodi vedodi li, is mine. So my peace, he will make peace. No, that's shalom look at the dictionary, is completeness, soundness. No problem, no argument. If I look at shin lamed mem without the vav, it means perform the vow. It also means recompense. And that recompense no man evil for evil, recompense evil with good. What do you get back? What do you give when something's given? If you make a vow, keep the vow. Not really recompense. But if Shin Lamed Mem means perform the vow, it means then shalom, it's got the vav in there, it means completeness and soundness. If you made a vow, perform the vow completely, and sound is like tav mem, like orim and tumim. What's orim? Lights. What's the vow? Everything Yahweh says, we will hear and we will do. Well, that's the light. That's the aspect of light. Everything Yahweh says, we will hear and we will do. You can't get any more light than that. Then what's tomim, tav mem, means artless. I don't put my own stuff on it. It's naive. I don't know anything else other than what he said. It's perfect, sound, meaning of whole, healthy, everything functionally appropriate. That's tovness. No problem, no argument. That's the peace. Do, Lamed Yod, my stuff totally without arguing. Do what I said. Okay. If only Israel had grabbed a hold of what I said with daring boldness and accomplished a shalom completely, performing the vow, then, the word then isn't here, but the next phrase is shalom yashali. That shalom, it also means requital, payment, wages, reward, complete, and well-being. Yod, ayin, shin, hey, that same word again, he will force, compel, accomplish, acquire, cause, or gain, lamed yod, mine, of me. In other words, it looks like Yahweh is saying, if you want me to pay what I said I'd pay, if you want me to do what I said I'd do, if you want to force my hand to give you the abundance, to give you the victory, to give you the peace, the health, the sanity, the accomplishment of whatever you are endeavoring, it's reciprocal for you to do that for me. You, man, Israel, Yasha Shalom for me. And then Shalom Yasha Li, you will get everything I told you that I'd give you. He's basically putting man, Adam, Israel in the driver's seat and he's saying, I've already told you how this works. You want abundance? You want to reach out into the universe and cause the vibrations to bring everything to you? Do what I said. Oh, guess what? That doesn't work for everybody else. It works for Israel. This is the deal Yahweh made for Israel. So interesting. If we look here at Jeremiah 31, he said, let's see. Well, there's a few ways to read this. The whole chapter of 31 is there was one phrase where he says, "I will put my I'll put my spirit within them." Where is that? Gosh, for some reason I don't see it. Oh, here, verse 32, like Jeremiah 31:31. If you read that, remember that. Back up to 30. Behold, the days are coming, Nam Yahweh, when I will seal a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah. Verse 31. Not like the covenant I sealed with their forefathers on the day that I took hold of their hand to take them out of the land of Egypt, for they abrogated or nullified, made void my covenant, although I became their master, Nam Yahweh. For this is the covenant, verse 32, that I will seal with the house of Israel after those days, Nam Yahweh. I will place my Torah within them, and I will write it onto their heart. I will be Elohim for them, and they will be a people for me. Verse 33, they will no longer teach each man his fellow, each man his brother, saying, "Know Yahweh, for all of them will know me from their smallest to their greatest, Nam Yahweh, when I will forgive their iniquity and will no longer recall their sin." So this Nam Yahweh means, it's translated, the word of Hashem, the word of the Lord, Nam Yahweh. That's him making a statement, like sealing it with his, the signet ring of the emperor, you might say. But he says, I will place my Torah within them, and I will write it on their heart. They broke, they abrogated, they made void the previous covenant by not doing what he said. So the question is, does that mean we still have to do what he said? You look at Ezekiel 36, 26 and 27. Let's back up. Ezekiel 36, 23. I will sanctify. Well, back up. I've mentioned this verse a lot of times, this passage. Thus says Yahweh Elohim, it's not for your sake that I act, O house of Israel, but for my holy name, my Shem Kadosh, that you have desecrated among the nations where you came. So he kicked them out of the land for desecrating his name, and wherever they went, they continued to desecrate his name. Desecrate meaning not live into it, not make it so it was comprehensible, not even so that anybody would know, what is this name Yahweh anyway? It's wrong. It's not the appropriate characteristics. I will sanctify, I will make kadosh, which is to say, I will make correct and clearly, truly the reality, my great name, my Shem Hagadol, which is desecrated amongst the nations. See, for something to be desecrated means it is no longer what it was supposed to be. It doesn't even look the same. It's not even identifiable as the same thing. So the status quo of this verse 23 in Ezekiel 36 is that up until this point, nobody knows the Shem of Yahweh. It's misappropriated, misidentified. It could be anything. It's an Elohim Achrim. The Shem Kadosh of Yahuwah is not evident to anybody because it was Israel's responsibility to make the Shem Kadosh apprehensible. And he says, I will make it apprehensible. I will sanctify, make Kadosh, my Shem HaGadol, my great name, that is desecrated among the nations, that you have desecrated among them. Then the nations will know that I am Yahweh. Nam Yahweh's vote. When I become sanctified through you before their eyes. So again, I've discussed this numerous times, but I take this as meaning him saying, Israel, when you be about the business of making my Shem Kadosh, through you, I am made in their estimation, in their regard, to their calculation. When you make me clear to them, then I'm going to step in. Somebody else said, no, that just means he's going to do it, and he's going to do it through Israel. What does that mean? Whenever he chooses to do it, but it's got to be, he's going to do it through it. Oh yeah, I'll bless Israel, and then everybody will know that. I take this as Israel's job is to make his name sanctified, or kadosh. The word kadosh is translated as holy or sanctified or sacred. Verse 24, I will take you from among the nations and gather you from all the lands, and I will bring you to your own soil. Hasn't happened yet. Well, some Jews are back in the land of Israel, but that's not Israel being scattered across the face of the earth. Then I will sprinkle pure water upon you that you may become cleansed. I will cleanse you from all your contamination, from all your idols. So at some point, he's going to get rid of the other things that have clung on to, been attached to his Shem, which are still attached to it. I will give you a new heart, put a new spirit within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you, and I will make it so that you will follow my decrees and guard my ordinances and fulfill them. That's verse 27. So if you look at verse 27, it says, I will make, it says, Vav, ayin, shin, yod, tav, yod. Well, tav, yod is I will. Ayin, shin, yod, that's I'm going to make this aleph, tav, standalone by itself, asher bechok, choki. Chet kuf is law, command. Tav lamed kaf, that's to walk, like halakha. Ve mishfat, tashameru, to shomer, ayin shin yod tav mem, and the ayin sheening, the doing. Well, so if anybody says, look, we don't have to do what he says. He's going to make a new covenant, Jeremiah 31, putting his spirit within us, and that'll be the covenant of grace. No law. Well, that's apparently not true. I will put my spirit within you, making it so that you will walk in my chok and mishpat and do them. So I read this to be that the evidence of having his ruach in us is that we're doing what he said to do. We're walking in his way. But why is it then the church says, no, we have the new covenant and we don't have to keep his law? The law was nailed to the cross. It's only the law of love. Love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. Boom, you've fulfilled everything. That's a different God. To me, that's a different voice. Jump down a few verses to verse 35 of Ezekiel 36, and people will say, this very land which had been desolate has become like the Garden of Eden. The ruined, desolate, and demolished cities have been fortified, inhabited. The nations that remain around you will know that I, YHUH, have rebuilt the ruins. I have replanted the wasteland. I, YHUH, have spoken, and I shall act. Well, that's Aleph Tav. I have spoken, and I shall act. Nam Yahweh. What I say, it happens. That's Aleph Tav. That's my understanding of Aleph. The word that goes forth from my mouth, Tav, won't return void. It'll accomplish what I said. So the world can't end. The world as we know it can't end until the very land has become like the Garden of Eden and everything rebuilt. Well, then what about the rapture and the tribulation? Seems like it's a different thing. If it seems like it's a different thing, then I can't buy into that being what's in front of us, because this is in front of us. Verse 31 of Ezekiel 36, then you will remember your evil ways and your deeds that were not good, and you will be disgusted with yourselves in your own sight because of your iniquities and because of your abominations. What are the iniquities and abominations of Israel? That's verse 31. Well, the abominations are Tav, Vav, Ayin, Bet, Tav, Yod, Kaf, Mem. Well, Ayin, Bet, that's the word for thick cloud. And the iniquities is Ayin, Vav, Nun, Tav, Yod, Kaf, Mem. So Ayin, Nun, Nun is a derivative of Ayin, Vav, Nun. Ayin, Vav, Vav, Nun also. And you realize it's what you guys are looking at and paying attention to and trying to figure out, is it Yahweh or not? Well, if we're looking at how he built the universe and science, mathematics, chemistry, but he also built it, sorcery and divination and astrology. It's astronomy, not astrology. It's like he built it so that it works. But the question is, who is Yahuwah? I will cause you to walk in my laws. Anybody feel compelled to keep the Sabbath day? I was just talking to a guy yesterday, and he said that he knows a whole bunch of people that are just thrown in the towel and say, that's it. We're going back to Judaism. We're going back to Christianity. Forget this Hebrew stuff. We're going to just forget the Sabbath day. It seems to be like no big deal. Like something's wrong. It's like, whatever. Really? Why is that? So another interesting consideration. that we have as history, Greco-Roman, especially the Greeks and Romans, Egyptians, Persians, these titans, deities, some think they're the Nephilim, some think they're the fallen ones, the Watchers, titans, whatever you want to call it. But there's stories, the men of yore, the mighty men of the ancient legends. Well, don't mess around with those. Well, how do you know whether something, this is just a pondering, how do you know whether something is a truth or something is that we should just leave it alone because it's all fiction and other gods? Elohim Achrim, you don't want to mess with the Elohim Achrim. Well, there's this picture of this one guy named Atlas. Typically, there's a statue of him holding the globe of the sphere of the earth on his shoulders. So Atlas is that guy who is holding the world. Well, did the Greeks really believe that there was a human figure, a titan, a demigod, holding the world, suspending the world? What's he standing on? Some other type of firmament, or is he floating in the air holding the world? There was a guy who was saying once that there was a story about the guy from Meru, that Stan Tenen, he was saying that in India they have this story that the world is not being held by man, but it's on the back of a turtle. Them crazy guys from India that believe that the world is on the back of a turtle? What's the matter with those people? Well, what's the matter with me that I don't understand what that means? How is it on the back of a turtle? And then you look at people who look at the back of a turtle and say, there's exactly 28 spaces, and there's a certain number around the perimeter and a certain number in the middle. And actually, it's a statement of how the universe is built. And so you stupid Americans who think that the people from India think that it's on the back of a turtle, you're the idiot. It's like, what? See, if something's a metaphor, you have to understand what is the back of a turtle. How is it laid out? Did Elohim build the back of a turtle shell to be a statement of how the cosmos functions? And that if we could see it and analyze it and realize the reality, then the metaphorical picture that the earth is poised on the back of a turtle is profoundly accurate. So just to jump off of that and say, well, what does it mean for the back of the man named Atlas to be holding the world? Is that some Greek deity that I should don't even let the names of their gods? Well, I don't know that Atlas is a god. Well, if he's superhuman, he's a god like Elohim, and it's like, but he's not a god. What if it's a metaphorical concept? So I was thinking, well, how? Okay, look at the names of the stars. It says in Job that Elohim is the one who named all the stars. Either in Psalms or Proverbs or Job. Anyway, the point is Elohim built the stars, named the stars, and put the stars in the Mazarot, in the constellations. Every one of them he named. So I was a few years ago trying to do the study with another guy about looking at the names of the stars and putting them into Hebrew letters phonetically and see if there's a way of analyzing what they mean. Well, the people who have done the study of the Mazarot say, well, a couple hundred years ago, a lot of the names of the stars got put into Arabic, maybe some Hebrew or Greek or Latin, and you can't necessarily say that was the name of the star from way back when, but I'm thinking maybe the Hebrew phonetics are the same, and that if we look at the spelling of the word in Hebrew, there might be some traces of what Elohim named them. But what if we did that with this word Atlas? Well, the US suffix is Greek masculine singular. So what if I dropped off the US? Well, if I keep it, Atlas could be Aleph Tav Lamed Samik or Lamed Shin, or it could be Ayin Tav, but Atlas. Well, there is no words in Klein's dictionary where that works. So if I drop off the S and just, what if it's Aleph Tav Lamed or Aleph Tav Lamed Hey? Aleph could be the prefix, but if I say Aleph Tav, Do I know what Aleph Tav is? Well, the word translated me, they will all know me, is spelled Aleph Tav Yod. Well, that's like my Aleph Tav. And so the study of this alphabet, the study of this thing called the Aleph Tav, is whatever he said is going to happen. That's Aleph becoming Tav, and it's his. So it's what he, Yahuwah's vote, the Elohim of Israel, it's what he determined to be the course of Project Eretz, Earth, Adam. Who is Adam? What is Adam that he is willing to make, allow to be birthed onto the face of the earth to run this course? They say there's about 8 billion alive now, and that the previous number of all that existed is about equal. So let's say there's 16, let's call it 20 billion people, 20 billion atoms to walk the earth. And Yeshua said, few find the way of life. How many? Doesn't matter how many, few. Few find the way of life. So he's willing to allow to be born, birthed, given consciousness, 20 billion atoms to gain the harvest of a few who would choose life, who would find life, who would seek life. And upon finding that life, they would grab on and hold on with all their might. Chazak, Bamauzi. How many will do that? But it's worth all the trauma, all the drama, all the theater of how many years of wicked, evil, mean, and nasty, vicious terrors to gain a few. And what is he going to do with those few that he gains, harvests from the face of the earth? Oh, he's got something in mind after this, that if any one of us could be one of those people, not only would it be worth it for us, it's worth all this investment to harvest a few that would be his Israel, bride of Christ. Is that a different thing? Yahweh built this universe and have all this happen, and all of what happened before the flood and sent the flood to harvest a few Adams. I was been sitting there trying to pen the Torah in my own hand, and I was going through Genesis 10 the other day. All these names of people, names of groups of people, and it was a burdensome task. That chapter 10 of Genesis, Bereshit, every name represents failure, people who turned their back on him, people who had loving wickedness. Well, this was after the flood, but even still, it's like there's words I'll keep myself from saying that it describes the theatrical display of such insanity, of such worthless. But he thinks it's worth it to get a few. Whatever he is trying to accomplish by allowing various Aleph consciousnesses to inhabit Bet bodies of Adam, to become transformed into this other being, and he needs them for what he has for the future. If we can step back and see that's the purpose of what's going on the face of the earth, that's why we exist. And we don't even know. We're just reading his words and saying, I'm willing to be that person. I'm gonna go along with whatever you throw at me, burden me with, in order to be that for you in the future. Help me, co-labor with me, please, because it's a task of great. Walk in your ways and be perfect. What did you say? sit down on the Shabbat? How do I do that? Am I supposed to keep the Moedim? And I was just reading about somebody saying that the Jews have corrupted the whole thing, so we can't use them as the model. And the Christian church is the great deception of the whore of Babylon, and we can't use them as a. What do we got? We got your words. Can any of us do this? What is it? What did he impose on us? Atlas. Atla, Aleph Tav Lamed Hey. The word Tav Lamed Hey, if Aleph means I will, to hang, suspend, devoted to, addicted to, attached to, clung to, hang on to, ascribed to, attributed to. That's Tav Lamed Hey. To suspend in uncertainty, doubtful, deferred, or delayed. To hang something up for display is all Tav Lamed. To make lofty, exalted, uplifted, or raised, Tav Lamed Vav Lamed. One thing dependent on another, Tav Lamed Yod Aleph. What we were just reading in Numbers or Proverbs 18:10 and Isaiah 27:5 and in Deuteronomy 5:25, Yahuwah's successful Project Earth, Project Adam, is dependent on whether any of us will walk in his ways and do what he said. Listen to his voice. Shomer, what he said to Zadivav, mitzvot, what he commanded. Guard what he said to do. Do what he said to guard. To hang something up for display. Hey, there's Yeshua. Interlinear writing, where the translation definition is pinned to this other word. That's the same word, Tav Lamed Vav Tav. Gallows, hanging from the neck, is also Tav Lamed Yod Hey. A medallion or a pendant, something hanging. A quiver with arrows or a sword hanging on a scabbard, Tav Lamed Yod. An athlete, Aleph Tav Lamed Tet. Athlete, there's the T at the end, fatigues himself contending for a prize. The man of Israel, the Adam of Israel, who will chazak b'mauzi, contending for the prize of becoming one of the few that follow Yahusha unto that other state of being after this earth realm is finished. Tav Lamed Vav Lamed, to make steep, difficult. Tav Lamed Lamed, Talal, like Tel Aviv, mounds or hills, lifted, raised, which is similar to the Shegev, something in Gimel Bet and Gimel Mem, something raised up. These are all synonymous words. A lock of curled hair, Tav Lamed Vav Lamed, to deceive, mock, deride, or laugh at. What has this got to do with Atlas? He said that until his people would listen to his voice and walk in his ways, then the promise of his being the champion of Israel is deferred, is delayed, is postponed. Until Israel comes back and walking in his ways, and then the land will resprout like the Garden of Eden. And then everybody will say, let us go to Jerusalem, because from there he will teach us of his ways. From there, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, everybody who is searching for the truth, people from all around the planet, of various cultures, of various religions, of various governments will say, the truth is with Yahweh Zavot, the Elohim of Israel. The only truth. And as he said in Ezekiel 36, Israel's job, being kicked out of the land and scattered across the face of the earth, was to propagate the truth across the face of the earth, and they failed to do so. But when they do so, when they make known the truth of who is Yahweh's Zavot, what did he say? What does he require of his people? Then he will kick in and make his Shem Hagadol Kadosh. He will, as it were, bless or amplify or multiply or exemplify the Migdal Shem Yahweh. And then people say, oh, That's Israel. And the people of the earth will bless themselves with Israel instead of Israel being the laughing stock, the mocked, derided, laughed at. So who's Atlas? Who's Atlah? Well, is it Yeshua? He's got to carry this burden. Oh, he carried the burden. He carried the burden of that crucifix on his back. Why? Because we kept forsaking Yahweh's mitzvot. So he carried the burden for our redemption, our forgiveness, so that we'd carry the burden of the world. The burden of the world. See, I see Atlah, as Israel. And for us to say, hey, I want to be your people, means that we're given a responsibility, an obligation, a privilege to carry the burden of the world on our back, which is to walk in the ways of Yahuwah, so that everybody of the world can see if the world's not functioning right, if nature's not functioning, if everything's dying off, it's because Israel's not walking in the ways of Yahuwah. Because everything I see written is that when Israel decides to do what Yahweh said, the world will recover. Well, then what about the tribulation and the rapture and the Antichrist and all that? And it's like, I don't know about all that. That's somebody else's eschatology. Oh, it's written in the book of Revelation. Yeah, but when is that supposed to happen? Under what conditions is that supposed to happen? People who obsess about that, whatever I've heard my whole life, never mention walking in the ways of Yahuwah. Why not? What does the book of Revelation look like if we're walking in the ways of Yahuwah? It's only interpreted by people who don't walk in his ways because they don't have to, because Jesus died on the cross. I think that's a miss. One thing dependent on the other. Tav Lamed Yod Aleph. Talayaha. It's a misappropriation of the connection. Why is it I've never heard in my whole life anybody encouraging the people of Yah to be the people of Israel, to be the people who guard his instruction? And if his instruction is very simply, do justice, do justly, have mercy on one another. That's righteousness. Righteousness doing what he said. What did he say? Help the widow and orphan, help the downtrodden, be kind to one another, quit working on the Sabbath day, keep the Moedim, give honor and regard to his Shem, his name, and distinguish his Shem from all the other ones. Well, see, it seems to me if we do that, we're synchronizing with his frequency, as it were. So instead of me trying to find what frequency is wealth and abundance out there in the universe, and I got to find some notes or 9 magic words to say, all I have to say is Yahweh Elohi. Yahweh's my Elohim. That's the frequency that he said in Zechariah 13:9. And if I say, he said, don't work on Shabbat, so I'm going to quit working on Shabbat. And if somebody else says, yeah, it doesn't seem to work, I'm going to go find some magic words, or I'm going to find something else. Fine, that's you. You go ahead, but I'm not going to. In fact, I don't even know the right calendar, but I'm going to keep his Moedim. And I can't even promise you that the Saturday that we have on the Gregorian calendar is the Shabbat. But until I find out otherwise, as far as I know, that's the Shabbat. I heard, whether or not this is true, it's called the Gregorian calendar because Pope Gregory designed the calendar to start with January 1st and to have these 12 months and to have the days of the week and the certain placement. And guess what? Pope Gregory made it, therefore he owns it. So everybody who uses the Gregorian calendar dates on a legal document are subjecting themselves to his authority. Is that true? It might be true. He made it, thus he owns it. So whoever uses, because he has a patent on it, you might say, even though they think they're stepping outside of the Vatican's authority. They're under the Vatican's authority by using his calendar. Well, doesn't that mean I should use Yahuwah's calendar and figure that the year starts around the equinox of the month of Aviv, springtime, and that we should go by his reckoning of months? Is there 13 months or just 12? And there's actually 13 constellations in the zodiac, not just 12. And it's like you hear all these different things, and it's like, I don't know. But it would be worth finding out in order to exalt the Shem Yahweh. Not trying to argue for the sake of argument, it's to exalt the Shem of Yahweh. And that really is the only passion, the only object, the only attention, to obsess over the Shem of Yahweh, get rid of all the other stuff and say, what does he want us to do? Isn't that synchronizing with the true, you might say, the harmonic resonance? And then to realize that Hodu is not just give thanks, give praise, confess sin. It's all that, because it's the attitude of, look at, we're wrong, we've been wrong, we were told wrong, we've been teaching wrong, but give thanks and praise and glory to Yahuwah. Hodu la Yahweh, Ki Tov. Because of his goodness, Ki also means then, Tovness. Tov, the functional will happen. Because forever, Ki Leolam Chazdo, his refuge, his place of kindness, forgiveness, compassion, of restoring us to this favorable Migdal of Nashagav, is in simply, well, because Hodu is not just give praise or thanks, it's also reverberating, echoing, resounding. It is that sending out the oscillations, Merachefet, the Ruach of Elohim, Merachefet al Pnei Hamayim. It's oscillating, it's sending out vibrations. It's the Ruach of Elohim's vibrations that we're supposed to synchronize to. I don't know whatever these other guys are looking for, but that's what I'm looking for. The merachefeting vibration, the Hodu of Yahweh. And if I don't know Yahweh, if what I have is an Elohim Akrim, I'm never going to synchronize. And Yahweh's testimony of identity, Moed, is held, retained, kept there. It's lodged in the Moedim. And if the Jews have gone astray with it, if the Christians have forsaken it, I suggest you make it your business. I suggest you choose life. I suggest you make it your business to find the testimony of Yahuwah's reality, truth, identity in the Moedim and keep it this year coming up. Somewhere around the equinox, somewhere around the springtime. Is it synchronized to 4 days after the equinox, the Zadok calendar? Is it correlated to the new moon, the full moon? Better start thinking, better start figuring it out. I would encourage everybody to figure out for themselves with their friends so that you can keep it corporately, collectively regard the Moedim. As regarding the true identity of Yahuwah. And that he will give us, for the sake of being his people, for the sake of doing so, he will give us everything he promised, which is the abundance that everybody seeks. They're all looking in the wrong place. Thank you, Yahweh, for giving us your word, the truth. The one extra verse here, verse 6 of Isaiah 27, Hey Bet Aleph Yod Mem. Well, Aleph Yod Mem is the word to be terrified. Bet Aleph is arrive. Hey Bet is give. But Hey Bet Aleph Yod is exaggeration and nonsense. And if Hey Bet is to give, it's kind of like terror. What gives? Whoa, is this a word of astounding? Yod Shin Resh Shin. Well, Shin Resh Shin, Sheresh is the word for root. Yod Shin Resh Shin Yasharash. Dictionary, lowest part, to take root, established or uprooted, chain, linked, rooted, source or origin. So you put all that together and it's like one thing grabbed onto the next, to the next, to the next. Well, that's kind of like this DNA lowest source root, but like a link of a chain hooked onto another link of a chain. Yod, Ayin, Kuf, Bet. Well, that's the word Jacob. But it's also following, that which follows. So to take root, being established back at the source or the origin from which Jacob was uprooted. For him to go back and take root in the Torah of Yahweh's words, Yod Zadi, Zitz, like Zitziot, it means twitter, chirp, auditory, glance, look or see something startling, fringe, Zitzi, blossom, flower, shine, Ve Paracha, which is Peresh Het, extend, flourish, sprout, blossom, fly. It's also youthful and mischievous, like some kid who just goes around doing stuff that is not supposed to. Israel, so it's like, go back in the beginning of this. Remember, this is right after, if you would only grabbed a hold of my Musi and PC would make with me. And then what's going on in the midst of terror if he's linked at the origin after what this is the promise given to Yaakov, flourishing, flying, blossoming like this flower, exploding, Israel filling Panei Tabal, the face of the world, but the word world there, Tav Bet Lamed, is also spice, seasoning, or relish. But see, Tav is a prefix. It comes from Bet Lamed, Lamed, Balal, or Babel, Bet Lamed, is to mix, mingle, violate natural order, abomination, confusion. So when Israel is just doing stuff, Judaism, Christianity, it's a perversion of the natural order. For Israel to go back to what Yahweh said at the beginning, the root source origin of his words, who is Yahuwah? It's the spice, seasoning, relish of the world. And the last word in the sentence, Tav Nun Vav Bet Hey, Tanob'a, Tanawabaha. Nib. It's this fruit. It's the output. It's the yield. I believe that's the word where you get the nib, like on a navel orange, the bump on the navel is. It's the outgrowth of fruition that everybody's waiting for, that will cause the world to be tov, circumstances. So when everybody talks about this being the time of, oh, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, people are saying, and they have for many years, but something's going to happen in February that's, oh gosh, horrible, and stuff going to happen in March, so it's going to happen this year, something's going to happen in August, and it's like, I'm aware they say those things. I'm not buying into it. I'm buying into Yahweh's words. And the people that are seeing, somebody was just saying, just so you know, somebody asked me to watch this thing. If I look back, I think it's Isaiah 26. They said 3 days of darkness are coming, some prophetic thing in Passover of 2025. Isaiah 26, verse 20, go, my people, enter your rooms, close the door behind you, hide for a brief moment till the wrath has passed. For behold, Yahweh is going forth from his place to bring punishment for the sin of the inhabitant of the world upon him, and the land will reveal its blood, no longer cover over its slain. They're talking about they had some word from the Lord. It's like, is this Jeremiah 23 that we're not supposed to be paying any attention to? I don't know. This lady's got some divine vision of all heck hitting the fan. Let's refer to it that way. All heck hitting the fan at Passover of 25. And it's like, oh, come on. In fact, she was saying that she was told, my people should fast on the first day of Passover from evening to evening. It's like, Yahweh's Avot said for his people to eat the Passover meal in the evening, but I believe a day starts in the morning, goes from morning to morning. So for this lady's getting a word from the Lord that his people are supposed to fast. That's contradicting what Yahweh Zavot said to his people. And I noticed half a dozen other things that this lady said that don't sound like Yahweh Zavot to me. Now, maybe the Lord God Jesus did give her a vision. And, oh gosh, what do you do with that? Well, she's piggybacking. The word she got is a vision, prophetic chaz, chet zion, piggybacks on Isaiah 26, the last verses there, verses 20, 21, right before Isaiah 27:5. But Yahweh said, my people need to grab a hold of my ma'uz. The ma'uz of Yahweh's avot of Israel is to say on the evening, on the nighttime passage of time on the 14th day of the first month, the month of Aviv, coming up pretty soon, eat this particular meal. And this lady gets a word from the Lord that the bride of Christ people, 144,000, are supposed to fast. And somebody was saying, well, that's because Queen Esther had a 3-day fast. And it's like, Queen Esther was in disguise. She was not living as Israel. And Yahweh says for his people to honor his name and make kadosh his Shem, his words. I'm not going to fast on the first day of Pesach of 2025, in spite of whatever vision this lady has. I'm going to eat the meal. And the question is, well, what's the right day? When do you start your count? Well, I'm going to have to figure that out. Go by the Zadok calendar, go by whatever consideration, But I'm saying these things, we might think, oh, well, it's just all study, it's all conjecture, it's this or that. And it's like, if something's coming up in a month and a half, about 3 days of darkness, you better not open the doors, look out the window, turn on your lights, the power grid's going to be off, and all what the heck is going to hit the fan. And monsters are going to be going around eating people outside and pretending to be voices of your relatives. Don't open the door, even if your own brother, you hear his voice outside saying, let me in, because they're people, ventriculist, masquerading as people who, it's like, I've heard things that people talk about, and it's like, Migdal Oz, Shem Yahuwah. I'm going to run to favorably agreed to the vow that everything Yahweh said, I will hear and I will do. And there is a victory that he promised to the righteous who walk in his ways, nashagav, inaccessibly strengthened, inaccessible to the enemy. I'm going to comprehend, I'm going to question, I'm going to contradict, I'm going to attain and reach his promise. And I'm going to picture myself standing surrounded by his words that I'm asking for, that it was in his name, standing in his identity, just like Yeshua did. That's the model. Odula yuaki tov ki leolam chazdo. Thank you, Yahweh. We should end here.